The morning it happened started like any other. I woke to sunlight filtering through the blinds, the familiar weight of Claire still warm beside me. She stirred when I kissed her forehead, mumbling something about making coffee as I grabbed my phone off the nightstand. Routine. Comfortable. Safe. I opened the banking app while waiting for the coffee to brew, absently scrolling through our accounts as the kettle whistled in the background. That's when my world tilted. Zeros everywhere. Even my damn retirement fund emptied. The ceramic mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the tile. I barely heard it. My fingers flew across the screen, refreshing, switching apps, checking every account I could think of. Maybe a glitch. Maybe some banking error. But the numbers didn't change. Claire? My voice sounded strange in the sudden silence. No response. The apartment felt too still. Her closet door stood ajar when I checked. Empty hangers swayed slightly, like someone had left in a hurry. The jewelry box on her dresser, the one I'd given her for our anniversary, gaped open, its velvet lining bare. I found her note taped to the refrigerator, written in her looping handwriting on the back of a grocery receipt. "I'm sorry. Don't try to find me." The coffee maker gurgled cheerfully in the background as I slid down the kitchen cabinets, the note crumpling in my fist. 12 years of marriage, every shared secret, every late-night promise, every dollar I'd ever earned. All gone before the coffee finished brewing. I first met Claire at a friend's rooftop barbecue in Brooklyn. It was one of those golden hour summer evenings where the city skyline glowed pink and the air smelled like charcoal and possibility. She was standing by the railing, laughing at something, her dark hair catching the sunset. I pretended to get a beer just so I could stand near her. We talked for hours that night. She had this way of listening that made you feel like the most interesting person in the world, head slightly tilted, those hazel eyes never leaving your face. When she discovered I worked in finance, she wrinkled her nose playfully. "So you're one of those Wall Street wolves," she'd teased. I remember the exact way her sundress fluttered in the breeze when she laughed. Our first date was at a tiny Italian place in the West Village, where the owner kissed her cheeks and brought us free limoncello. Claire spoke fluent Italian, her hands dancing as she explained how she'd studied abroad in Florence. "That's where I learned life's too short for bad wine or boring lovers," she'd said, clinking her glass against mine with a look that made my pulse jump. She moved in after 6 months. It felt fast, but also inevitable, like we'd been waiting our whole lives to share a bathroom and argue over thermostat settings. Claire filled our apartment with thrift store paintings and mismatched throw pillows, humming as she cooked elaborate meals that left our tiny kitchen wrecked. She'd kiss flour off my nose and say, "Money's just paper, babe. Memories are what matter." Maybe that should have been my first warning. But when you're in love, red flags just look like flags. The financial trust happened gradually. First, it was her taking over the grocery budget because she had a system. Then she offered to handle our bills since my work hours were crazy. By our second anniversary, she had logins for everything. My 401k, my brokerage account, even the emergency fund my grandfather had helped me start. "Two halves of a whole," she'd whisper when I hesitated, her fingers tracing patterns on my chest in the dark. "What's mine is yours, right?" I'd nod, kissing her forehead, ignoring the quiet voice that wondered why she never added me to her accounts. Claire had student loans, she explained. Bad credit from her wilder years. "I don't want to drag you down," she'd say, eyes shining with what I mistook for devotion. The night I gave her full access to my trust fund, the one my parents had set up when I was born, she cried happy tears and slow danced with me in the kitchen to a song only she could hear. Her body felt like home against mine. Now I realized she wasn't crying because she was moved. She was crying because she'd won. Looking back, the signs were all there, tiny fractures in the foundation I was too love-blind to see. It started with small things. Claire would casually mention how stressed she was about money, sighing over bills at the kitchen table. "I just wish I could get ahead," she'd murmur, rubbing her temples like the weight of the world was on her shoulders. Of course I offered to help. That's what partners do, right? First it was covering more of the rent, then paying off her credit cards, just until my promotion comes through, she promised. I didn't mind. I made good money and seeing her relax made me happy. But then the help became more strategic. One night, she presented me with a color-coded budget spreadsheet. Look how much we could save if we combine everything, she said excitedly, pointing at projections that showed our future dream home, early retirement. Her enthusiasm was contagious. When she kissed me and said, "Trust me, I've got this," I did. Slowly, she took over everything. She set up autopay for all our bills from my accounts. She insisted on handling the investments because she had a better eye for opportunities. When I mentioned wanting to check our portfolio, she'd wave me off with a laugh. "Babe, you work all day with numbers. Let me take this off your plate." There were little red flags, but I explained them all away. The mysterious ATM withdrawals. "Oh, that was for your surprise birthday dinner." "The new credit card I didn't recognize?" "Just for emergencies, sweetheart." The time I caught her logging into my account at 3 a.m. Couldn't sleep, so I was paying bills. Once, my best friend Jake pulled me aside after dinner. "You sure about Claire managing everything, man?" he asked. "She just gives me a weird vibe." I brushed him off. "She's better at this stuff than I am." The final surrender happened on our anniversary. Over champagne, Claire held my hands and said, "If something ever happens to me, you should have access to all my accounts too." She looked so vulnerable in that moment. "Let's just make everything joint. No secrets." I signed the paperwork the next week. She never did add me to her accounts, though. There was always an excuse. The bank needed more documentation. The system was down. She'd get to it next week. I didn't push. I trusted her. Right up until the morning I woke up to zeros and an empty closet. Now I understand. Claire wasn't managing our finances. She was managing me. The morning sunlight felt like an insult as I stared at my phone screen, the zeros burning into my retinas. My first thought was that it had to be a mistake, some banking glitch, a system error. I refreshed the app 3 more times before my hands started shaking. I called the bank first. The customer service rep's voice was polite but detached as she confirmed the transactions. "Yes, sir. The funds were transferred out in 3 increments yesterday evening. The accounts were properly accessed with verified credentials." Her credentials. I hung up, my throat tight. The apartment was too quiet. No hum of the coffee maker, no soft footsteps in the hallway. Just the hollow echo of my own breathing. I checked her side of the closet first. Half empty, the hangers askew like she'd left in a hurry. Her favorite suitcase was gone. The drawer where she kept her passport, empty. Then I saw the envelope on the kitchen counter, my name written in her looping script. Inside was a single sheet of paper and our spare car key. "I'm sorry it had to end this way. Don't look for me. It's better if you just let go." No explanation, no remorse, just 12 words, and then nothing. I sank onto the couch, the note crumpling in my fist. My mind raced through the last few weeks searching for clues. Had there been signs? That business trip she'd taken last month, had she even gone? The late-night phone calls she'd dismiss as just work? I grabbed my laptop, logging into every account I could think of. Credit cards, maxed out. The joint savings, drained. Even the emergency cash I kept in a safe behind my dresser, gone. She'd known where everything was. She'd planned this. The worst part? The dates on the transfers? She'd started moving money weeks ago. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. The day before she left, she'd liquidated everything. All while kissing me goodbye in the mornings, texting me heart emojis, laughing at my jokes over dinner. I'd been living with a ghost, and I hadn't even noticed. I called her phone again, straight to voicemail. I texted, my fingers stumbling over the keys. "What the hell did you do?" The message didn't even deliver. That's when the numbness cracked and the rage hit. I slammed my fist into the wall, the pain sharp and sudden. The framed photo of us on our wedding day rattled on the shelf, then crashed to the floor. The glass shattered. I stared at our smiling faces, frozen in time. Had any of it been real? The first 48 hours passed in a haze of phone calls and paperwork. My hands shook as I dialed the fraud department, listening to the endless hold music while staring at the shattered photo frame on my living room floor. The bank representative's tone shifted when I explained my wife had emptied our accounts. "Sir, since she was a joint account holder, this isn't technically fraud," she said gently. "You'll need to contact law enforcement." At the police station, the detective's expression turned sympathetic as I recounted the story. He'd heard this before. "We'll file a report," he said, sliding a pamphlet for legal services across the desk. but marital assets are complicated. You'll need a lawyer. My parents' reaction cut deeper. My mother's voice broke when I told her. We warned you about her, she said, the words heavy with unspoken I told you so's. My father just kept repeating, how could you be so careless? Each syllable landed like a hammer blow. The financial devastation became clearer with each call. My credit cards had been maxed out on luxury purchases I'd never seen. An $8,000 Chanel bag, first-class airline tickets to Bali, a last-minute stay at the Four Seasons. The retirement account I'd spent a decade building, liquidated with massive early withdrawal penalties. Even my car title had been transferred. Friends' reactions ranged from outrage to awkward silence. Jake showed up at my door with a six-pack and a determined expression. We'll fix this, he said, but his eyes betrayed his doubt. Others gradually stopped returning my calls, uncomfortable with my sudden descent from stable professional to cautionary tale. The most humiliating moment came when my corporate card was declined during a business lunch. I had to call my CFO from the restaurant bathroom to explain why I needed an emergency advance. His pause before responding spoke volumes. At night, I scoured our shared devices for clues. Her iPad still had our Netflix logged in. I found search history for how to disappear completely and best countries for asset protection, dating back 6 months. The receipts folder contained PDFs for a storage unit I'd never seen, paid for with my credit card. The storage key wasn't in the envelope she left. Of course it wasn't. Sleep became impossible. I'd lie awake analyzing every moment of our marriage, every financial decision, every time I'd dismissed that nagging voice in my head. The woman I'd built a life with had been meticulously dismantling it piece by piece, and I'd handed her the tools with a smile. Worst of all, she'd known exactly how long it would take me to notice. The transfers were timed perfectly, initiated on a Friday evening when banks were closed, giving her a 72-hour head start before I could even begin to respond. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a perfectly executed financial extraction, and I'd been the perfect mark. I became obsessed with finding her. First, I called every mutual friend, my voice carefully casual. Hey, just checking if you've heard from Claire. Most sounded genuinely surprised. A few hesitated too long before answering. One finally admitted, she texted me last week about needing space, said you two were having problems. I hired a PI, a grizzled ex-cop who took my retainer with a look that said another sucker. He traced her last known credit card charge to a gas station in Nevada. Then, nothing. The trail went cold. Her social media was scrubbed clean. No posts, no tags, just a single profile picture of a sunset, no face, no location. I checked it obsessively, as if the pixels might rearrange into a clue. Then came the voicemail. 3 weeks after she vanished, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Her voice was different, flatter, like she'd practiced the words, "Stop looking, you won't win this, move on." I played it on loop until the words lost meaning. That's when I noticed the background noise, seagulls, ocean waves. Had she fled to some coastal town, or was it a recording meant to mislead me? The PI found the storage unit, empty except for a single receipt taped to the wall, a $12,000 wire transfer to the Caymans, dated the day before she left. That night I sat in the dark with a bottle of whiskey, tracing the edges of our wedding photo with my thumb. The glass had cut through both our faces when it shattered. I realized then she didn't want to be found, and I was done being her fool. The whiskey bottle was still half full when I poured it down the sink the next morning. The burn in my throat had been punishment enough. I started with the bank, filed disputes, changed every password, put fraud alerts on my credit. The banker's pitying look stung, but I kept my voice steady. I need to rebuild. My lawyer was blunt. You'll never see that money again? The prenup I'd laughed off signing? Suddenly it didn't seem so ridiculous, but he helped me freeze what assets remained and start divorce proceedings. Consider it tuition, he said. Expensive lesson, but you'll never make this mistake twice. I moved to a tiny studio apartment, sold what I could, took extra consulting gigs. The first night I made rent without touching savings, I sat on my futon and cried, not from self-pity, but something fiercer. Pride. Jake dragged me to a boxing gym. Hit something that hits back, he said. The first time I took a punch, Something inside me snapped into focus. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a fighter. At night, I studied financial forensics like a detective reviewing case files, learned about offshore trails, shell companies, the tricks people use to disappear. Knowledge became armor. 6 months later, my credit score crept back up. The divorce papers finalized. And when a mutual friend tentatively mentioned Claire had been spotted in Miami, I just shrugged. Let her run. I wasn't chasing ghosts anymore. Time doesn't heal all wounds, but it does teach you how to live with the scars. 2 years later, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, smaller than the one Claire and I shared, but entirely mine. The morning sun felt different now, like it was shining for me alone. My banking app showed steady numbers climbing upward, each deposit a quiet victory. I thought about tracking her down sometimes, hiring a better investigator, taking her to court, but revenge would just make her the protagonist of my story again, and I'd already given her too many chapters. The lessons cost me everything, but they were worth the price. Trust should be earned, not gifted. Love isn't a blank check, and no one, no matter how sweet their smile or convincing their tears, gets unlimited access to my life again. My lawyer forwarded one last email from Claire's attorney last month, some bullshit about closure and mutual forgiveness. I hit delete without reading the rest. Funny thing is, I don't hate her anymore. Hate would mean she still matters. The woman I married never really existed, just a carefully constructed illusion designed to empty my accounts. The real Claire? She's somebody else's problem now. I toast her sometimes when I'm feeling generous. That final betrayal forced me to become someone stronger, smarter. She wanted to leave me with nothing, but she accidentally gave me the most valuable thing possible, the unshakable knowledge that I can survive anything. The coffee maker beeps. My phone buzzes with a date reminder, not for court or lawyers, but for drinks with someone new, someone who doesn't know my history and doesn't need to. I lock my phone with a smile. She took my money, but I kept my future.